My laptop just want to do its own thing this morning. I had to restart everything. But anyway, happy Thursday, beautiful people. Got a bit of a headache also, so I actually just took something for it, because otherwise I would have been having to cut this short in like 10 minutes, so body is detoxing and stuff, and while I'm fasting, I hit that little point, so we'll make it through this morning. All right, beautiful people, happy Thursday. It is January the 19th, 2023, day 319 of year 4 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets, another 4-year consecutive day count, day 1,338. We're picking back up in the Romance of the Red Star on page 11. In Big Blue, it's page 12, chapter 8, right at the beginning of the chapter for this one. And we're going to read a little bit of that. Actually, we're going to probably just read this is the last chapter. We're just going to read this last part right here. And then we're just going to hop on over to delusions and science and spirituality and finish reading a little bit more on this whole reincarnation chapter. Father, we thank you for collaboration and instruction with those who know more than we do, so that we can continue to grow. But anyway, the neck greetings. My beautiful rising. Audrey, shalom, sis, auntie. Grand Thursday. Tabitha, happy Thursday. Shebrew, hey sis. All praises to the Creator. And everybody else here hanging out in the background. Elijah, peace and blessings. All right, y'all, let's get started. Moving a little bit slow this morning, trying to pull myself together. All right, y'all. This week has been super busy. Everything last week of the term, working on this 15-page paper, professor emailing me, Pamela, make sure you're watching out for this, this, and this, working on paperwork for the company. Called my aunt last night. I'm like totally over everything. So it's probably why also it's adding to my headache. Because honestly, look, after I got off the phone with you last night, I didn't woosah right away because I had to finish up something, because I know if I sat down and woosah, that was going to be it for the rest of the night. So for like another hour, another 2 hours, I was working on some stuff that I had to finish last night, and then I was like, this is it. I'm about to go to bed. This is too much. Because I was snappy, ready to snap on everybody, send everybody to bed. All right, y'all. So we're putting it together this morning. All right, y'all.
This will be my first and final input for all. Just so y'all know, watch a movie called Mom and Dad. That's it. Watch Mom and Dad. I need y'all to watch it too. This is something y'all are going to relate to as parents. Watch it. It is hilarious. Please.
Okay, son. We will. Uncle JB, shalom, shalom, Hannah. Grand Rising. Dawn. Hey, girl, hey. Look, you remember, yep, that was Isaiah. You got it right. Shannon, shalom. All right, y'all. Let's get going. Okay, so in Romance of the Red Star and Cycle of Creation, which is called Book of Jehovah, in Big Blue, we paused in chapter 8 down at the, on the left side of the page. At the bottom. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my mark wrong. It's chapter 9, right side of the page. And it started this morning. I had to restart my computer. Now Facebook look like it's going in and out. I'm going to just leave it alone. All right, y'all. Chapter 9. Remember, it's chapter 8 in Big Blue on page 12. Jehovah said, and God caused a record to be kept in heaven of his dominions and his lords, and he and they shall enjoin it upon their successors forever to keep a like record. And in times of my harvest, a copy of these records shall be taken up to my ethereal heavens and filed with my Orion chiefs and archangels in the roadway of the travel of the great solar serpent. Remember, the solar serpent is just like the planets in the solar system, right? They calls it the solar serpent, all right? And the flow of the planets and how they go. Let's see. Hold on. And in times of my harvest, a copy of these records shall be taken up to my ethereal heavens and filed with my Orion chiefs and archangels in the roadway of travel of the great solar serpent, for their deliberation as to the progress and management of the inhabitants of earth and her heavens. Think not, O ye angels, that the resurrection of your heirs and their descendants that come up out of earth is an easy matter and of steady progress, devoid of mishaps and woeful darkness. The angels under you shall become at times rebellious and defiant, disregarding your laws and decrees, and they shall desert your heavenly places and go down to the earth in millions and hundreds of millions, and they shall drive away the Ashars, and then assume guardianship over mortals, but they shall develop no righteousness, but they will inspire mortals to war and destruction. And these angels will themselves take to war and evil on every hand within the place of your heavens. With the foul gases of atmosphere shall they make weapons of war and places of torment. With these elements shall they make suffocating hells in order to cast one another in chaos.
Prisons. Oh, another thing that I realized about this stuff, never ever, when they're talking about it, never ever take it with the front value, like try to decrypt what they're saying, because the story is not what you think. Oh no, this is what, no. It's just a story, it's just a story version of what actually happened. It is putting it into a way where it's easier to understand than giving you it up front and you just like, what in the world is wrong? And then, yeah, they want to bring you in, not put you out.
And mortals who shall be slain in war shall be born in spirit in chaos on the battlefields. In chaos, such spirits enter the S world, and they shall not know that they are dead as to earth life, but shall still keep fighting right and left, and the enemy shall take enemy in these heavens and cast them in places of torment which they shall have built, and they shall not know peace nor wisdom. And the work of your heavens shall become as nothing, and ye shall turn, going about delivering hells and the spirits in chaos, and your labor shall be exhaustive. Verily shall ye cry out because ye came and peopled earth. So he letting them know, listen, y'all done went down here and had sex with the sons of men, right? Now you created offspring that you're now responsible for. Teach them, raise them up, but don't think you're going to go down here, it's going to be a piece of cake, right? Because some of them going to turn loose from you, and they're going to flip everything on its axis up, well, on its head. They're going to drive you out, and they're going to assume the positions down there, and they're just going to run havoc. They're going to start wars. They're going to cast each other into hell, suffocating flames, fires, gases, all this stuff. They're going to create all of this, and now your job, in turn, is going to be to come and break all of this up and deliver them and clean them up and continue to raise them up, right? This is what Creator saying to those who coming down here and said, then you're going to start crying out and you're going to wonder why you ever went down there in the first place. You should have just left them good earth people alone. Look, Rita, good morning. Key, shalom, shalom. Just me, shalom. Jania, shalom. Girl, I tried to stay on that call last night while I was working. Everything was just sounding like a bunch of jumble to me, because I was, at that point when I was listening to that, I was working on, I had started working on some of my homework, and I was like, I'm doing too much. I can't focus. The kids was coming in and out the room, asking questions, TV playing in the background. I got that playing in my ear. I'm trying to focus on this report. I'm like, you know what? This is too much. That's when I start snapping on everybody else. But it's me that letting all this stuff, I got the thing playing in my ear, the TV playing in the background. I should have been cut all that stuff off. Sony Shalom, Nini Shalom says, Dreadful Cosmo. What's up, brother Tiffany? Hey, girl. Hey, the bronze yoga's in the house. Shalom. All right, y'all. And the work of your heavens shall become as nothing, and ye shall turn to going about delivering hells and the spirits in chaos, and your labor shall be exhaustive. Verily shall ye cry out because ye came and peopled earth. This also have I created possible, for both angels and mortals shall learn to know the elements of the heavens and the earth, and to know the trials and misfortunes of love. Nor have I made wisdom possible unto any man nor angel that knoweth not my elements and the extremes of evil and good which I created. But in the times of great darkness, which shall come upon the earth and these heavens, I will bring the earth into Danha, and my Etherians shall come in my name and deliver them. And again, for another cycle, shall they be left with the lessons given unto them. But they shall fall again and again in course of time. But again will I deliver them through my gods and goddesses, will I cause them to comprehend the magnitude of my creation. As ye travel from heaven to heaven in atmospherian ships, even so shall ye inspire mortals to build corporal ships and sail across the oceans, that the inhabitants of different divisions of the earth may become known to one another. And when the inhabitation of the earth shall be completed, and the nations shall have established civil communion around from east to west, in that same time will I bring the earth into the Cosmon era. And my angel ambassadors, gods and goddesses, shall render up the roads of these heavenly kingdoms. Through them will I reveal unto mortals the creation of my worlds and the history and dominion of my gods and lords on earth, even from this day down to the time of Cosmon. A time shall come when earth shall travel in the roadway of the firmament, and so great a light will be thereon, that its vortex shall burst, even as a whirlwind bursteth, and the whole world shall be scattered and gone, as if nothing had been. But ere that time cometh, my Etherian host shall have redeemed man from darkness, nor shall the inhabitants of earth marry, for the time of begetting will be at an end, and man shall become extinct. The red star, earth, will have fulfilled its labors, and its services shall be no more. The vortex of the sun shall be round, and the body of the great serpent coiled up. In the place where earth was, shall some of my far-off worlds come and fulfill the labor allotted to them. And the atmospherians who have not been redeemed from darkness in that day shall alight on a new world and also fulfill their labor. So the same process is happening. Look like when earth began a couple chapters ago, that inhabitants from other worlds, when their world dissolved, they were able to move over to the new world, right? And so the same thing is going to happen. When this is no more, whatever spirits are left here at that time, they will migrate to the new world, to the new earth or whatever. Let me read that again. The red star, earth, remember earth, another name for the earth is the red star. That's a good question. Mom, shalom, shalom. Tabitha said, it makes one wonder, did the fall of mortal and angel occur before on other worlds? It occurs on every world. That's what it just said up here. That's what it just said towards the beginning of this chapter. It happens over and over again. When it's time for the worlds to be inhabited, this same process tends to happen over and over again, because you got those that at the end of the realm, right? At the end of that world, they haven't. So it's a lot of them spirits who were died prematurely, in infancy, whatever. Different ones that haven't experienced certain things. Now it's a new world, new people, and these same type of thoughts start coming to them about the new people on the world and them wanting to go down. They're supposed to be learning about the elements and all this stuff. Then they get infatuated with the people, and by this time, the bodies have been developed into nice and round, shapely specimens, and they want to go touch and test, and they start having babies. So now they're responsible for them, and this whole process keeps going over and over and over again. Atlanta's ugly. Selah shalom, brother. Elon Musk is trying to do this in the corporal state. Yeah, he trying some stuff. Jamil said the Arca Speeder was mentioned happening on another planet. Yep. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. I'm sure with different variables and things that happen or whatever, but from what we understand with the development of worlds, some of these same cycles happen, you know, for the different growth, right? Okay. The red star, Earth, will have fulfilled its labors, and its services shall be no more. The vortex of the sun shall be round, and the body of the great serpent coiled up in the place where Earth was. Shall some of my far-off worlds come and fulfill the labor allotted to them, and the atmospherians who have not been redeemed from darkness in that day shall alight on the new world and also fulfill their labor. And Jehovah calls the angels of atmosphere to assemble together and organize the first kingdom of the heaven on earth. And the record of the great serpent showed the firmament of Timyi in the third circuit of Savorcum and Danha 24. Thus ended the inorganic habitation of earth and her atmosphere. And that is where we're going to pause at today, because it starts the next book, the cycle of Sathantes. But we ain't going to get into that one today. I'm going to read a little bit more of this reincarnation chapter. So, page 12. Okay. Beautiful people. All right. If you got your book. What?
That's the shortest video you have ever made.
He said this. See, I wasn't about to end it. He came right. He said, "What? You done? That's the shortest video you ever made." Cause he was complaining. He was complaining yesterday. Y'all didn't see him. He was like, "Why you gotta take so long in the morning?" He was just mad because I didn't punch the code in for him. He said I took too long to punch the code in, so he was sitting over there on the steps, watching the whole video. Like, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" But I'm just ignoring him. I look up every now and again. But he complained real good when I cut this off. "Why do you have to be so long? It's like 2 hours." I said, "You're right. I should cut it down, keep it at the hour mark." But yeah, they have no patience at this point. They're still developing patience. Nazarene and scene, shalom. Staffy, shalom, shalom. Look, Selah, when I saw Atlanta's ugly, I figured you did that, because sometimes when I'm on other people's videos, I don't realize I'm on my backup channel until I go to make a comment. I'm like, "Oh, shoot, it say Awaken the Truth Ministry backup channel." I'm like, "Oh, darn it." I log out, come back in. My bad, logged in from the wrong account. Soon as I saw it, I knew you was in your backup account. All right, y'all. On page 299, we pause at the end of the first paragraph, and the next paragraph starts with sudden death. BC, shalom, shalom. Okay. If you sample the reincarnation literature today, you find that perhaps 7 or 8 out of 10 such, quote, previous personalities, end quote, met a violent or untimely demise. Now, this is something to ponder. Contrast this 75% with the mere 7% of the general population who die in a sudden or violent manner. How can reincarnation be natural, as proponents claim, if this lopsided statistic puts the lie to its normality? Clearly, there's something else at work. That something else brings us back to the invisibles, the unquiet dead whose traumatic or abrupt demise becomes the source of a great array of ghostly disturbances, like the murdered prostitute whose return we examine in chapter 6. Speaking of murder, let me cite a book on children's past lives written by Carol Bowman, a psychotherapist and reincarnationist. One can scarcely find among her various case histories a commonplace sort of death for the previous personalities mentioned: killed in a quarrel, killed by an angry customer, gunshot, killed by the train, fatal wound, shot in the back of the head, killed in the gang shooting, robbed and killed, hit by a car, one of the Marines killed in the barracks explosion in Beirut in 1983, Bowman 2001, chapter 17, pages 16 and 2:11. Truth to tell, this is standard fare in the reincarnation literature. It hardly varies. Past scenes of horrific crime, accidents, slaughter. Where is the statistically expected 93% of natural deaths? It's not there. As I say, something else is going on. Bowman further informs us that a child will matter-of-factly tell them, her parents, she remembers being shot or dying in a car accident or in a war. She even quotes her own children's stories. Quote, my daughter remembers lying long ago in a house fire, and my son gave a realistic description of dying amid the horror and chaos of a Civil War battle, end quote. It is much the same in Helen Wambach's survey, where allegedly reincarnated subjects are simply giving voice to the sudden dead. One of Wambach's subjects told her, quote, this current lifetime seemed the direct result of my childhood traumatic death in past life, end quote. Case A440, death at age 4 in a bombing attack in Romania, 1942. Another said, quote, I felt I had just died in a war, end quote. Case A148, Wambach, 1979, pages 47 and 58, etc. ad nauseum. Nevertheless, sudden death, especially in war, is precisely the factor behind the return of discarnates to the earthly plane. Quote, there are such as are slain in war, who, dying in the heat of passion and fear and anger, become wild and earthbound on battlefields, or mayhap stroll away in deserted houses and are lost. Of these, there are hundreds of millions, and they are in all countries and amongst all peoples in the world. End quote. Wuqabi, Book of Judgment, chapter 32, verses 9 through 10. In a French case, an 18-year-old girl named Marie was put into a hypnotic sleep. She was regressed to a time before her birth in which she, quote, was, i.e. channeled, a fisherman's wife named Lena. It seems that the death of Lena's little child, followed by the loss of her husband in a shipwreck, drove her to despair. She jumped into the sea from a high cliff and drowned herself. But Marie's mesmeric vision was not past life recall at all, only hypnotically induced clairvoyance, bringing her to the threshold of the unquiet dead, most likely a case of temporary spirit possession. Quote, reincarnation is spirit obsession and the squandering of one's true spiritual destiny, end quote, wrote Faithist Bob Baer, Personal Communication. A past life showman type, in another case, said he wanted to help people by unlocking, quote, all their lives, end quote. He about to have somebody really, he about to develop some people like the dude in Split. Listen, a past life showman type, in another case, said he wanted to help people by unlocking, quote, all their lives, end quote. In one of his sessions, a woman began to experience the pain of an ill-fated, prolonged delivery aboard ship on the high seas. She died in childbirth. Vivid as the impressions were, the woman in this guided recall was not sure what she was seeing and feeling. Her instructor, gently initiating her, knew it was a past life. Wiseman, 1977, page 126. Not in my view, she had simply encountered someone else's tragic end in the deep. It is often the nature of spirit influence to be felt as if it comes from self. In Ian Stevenson's extensive studies too, a gross disproportionate number of the previous personalities had died violently. Quote, many have ended in murder, end quote. A fact Stevenson considers potentially most important since the statistic far exceeds the incident of violent death in general population. Yes, of course. But then he attempts to explain it, or rather explain it away, by reasoning that violent deaths are more memorable than natural ones. Among Stevenson's cases of children claiming reincarnation, the following are the ways the incoming personality had died: shot by brother, killed in World War II, drowned in a flood at age 11, heart attack, murdered by two men at a fair, stabbed and robbed, hit and run, died at 18 of severe diabetes, died young, hit by a car at age 6, ran off road at age 18, promised his niece he'd come back as her son. In one striking case, a little Belgian boy fancied himself his own uncle who had died in World War I in a hail of machine gunfire. Hearing the click-clack of an old-style camera, the 3.5-year-old screamed, "Don't! They killed me that way last time!" End quote. Stevenson, 1987, 55, page 118 and 160. To the spirit release worker, though, it is a case of entity obsession and should be cleared. Another, quote, life reader, end quote, blames the tension in post-war generations on, quote, a carryover from the frightening conditions under which many of them recently met death in World War II, end quote. Quinn, 1975, page 48. In the same vein, quote, past life regressionists, end quote, Betty Binder claimed to have had countless dealings with casualties of the Second World War. Reborn shortly after the end of that conflict, these souls came back quickly because they died young and felt cheated or had left unfinished business. Murder victims incarnate Quote, murder victims incarnate almost immediately, end quote, agrees Sybil Leek in Reincarnation, the Second Chance. Did they really come back? Or did they ever leave the earthly plane, lingering in outer darkness, the gray condition, clinging desperately to physical existence, despite the loss of a body? Perkins, 1977, page 101. Interesting that among one Northwest Ameri Indian group, it is held that those mutilated and slain find it difficult to reincarnate. Instead, they simply lead the ghostly life, never quite able to either make it up to the spirit world or back to the earthly one. They are the same kind of earthbound entities we get in stubborn poltergeist cases and hauntings, as discussed in Chapter 6. In a word, sudden death and earthbound go hand in glove throughout the enormous literature of ghosts and hauntings. And this situation is possible thanks to the suddenness itself. Many do not even realize they are dead or know where they are. Why has this truth been so patently ignored by the merchants of rebirth? Because they too are cymats, unable to conceive of life outside of a fleshly body. Dr. Stevenson thought past life stories of children were particularly convincing. In Thailand, for example, he studied a very young boy who had told his parents that his past life had been robbed and killed, In Thailand, for example, he studied a very young boy who had told his parents that his past self had been robbed and killed in a town some distance away. It seems that this victim, after sitting as a spirit in a tree near the murder site for several years, finally spotted a man he thought he should follow home. He did. The man's wife was pregnant, and the murder victim was reborn through her. As the investigation deepened, the father of the boy confirmed being in that town on the day referred to, while the young son provided many veridical details of the man who had been robbed and killed. Next section is entitled Invisible People. Surely the circumstances could just as well indicate that this child was haplessly overshadowed and obsessed by the earthbound spirit who had been left bewildered by his brutal demise. But that the spirit became the very boy is another story, a theory waiting for evidence. Stevenson's many anecdotes, rather than proving reincarnation, actually document the typical stunts of entities lingering on the earthly plane. Indeed, Stevenson's cases, quote, suggestive of reincarnation, end quote, fall apart completely when rebirth is understood as body snatching. A Hindu man, for example, is poisoned to death. Instead of waiting the theoretical 10 or 20 or 50 years, he reincarnates immediately. Not only does the time lapse fail to fit the theory, but the fresh body is not that of a newborn. The spirit of the poisoned man has overtaken a 3.5-year-old boy who has apparently died of smallpox, leaving his body vacant. And sure enough, upon reviving, the little boy identifies entirely with the life and habits of the poisoned victim. He is no longer quite himself and instantly recognizes all his former family members when taken to them. Langley, 1967, page 231. So real quick, just in case you getting kind of confused. So when somebody dies, right, and the spirit comes in and possesses the body, whether they call it reincarnation or whatever, they don't die to where they've been dead for hours. It'll be like one of those quick deaths where, especially if your spirit has, you have already lived a life of, let's just say, of ignorance, being held in bondage to different religions and stuff. It's easy to come in and put your spirit in abeyance and take over. So if somebody has a heart attack and they die, you know, it's at that point, right then and there, while they're doing like the CPR or whatever, that the spirit will come, that very, very small window of bringing you back. That's when they'll come in. And as you come back, they hop right in there, right in front. I got this. Boom. All right. Whew, I'm back. I didn't think I was going to make it. Does John seem a little different to you? I mean, ever since the heart attack, things have been just a little off. Yeah, it's probably spirit intrusion at this point, right? But yeah, so it's not somebody like they've been dead and in the grave or about to go to the funeral. It's that very, very small window of time where they're being resuscitated that it allows, depending on the conditions of the spirit of the person who died, depending on how susceptible they are, spiritual protection, whatever you want to say, is that very small window of time where that can happen to them. How about the cases where mouth to mouth is done? Yeah, I'm sure. It's the same thing. If somebody had a heart attack or something and they doing mouth to mouth, I don't know. I think a couple things could happen right then and there, especially if the person that's giving you mouth to mouth is obsessed. The spirit could transfer from them to you, right? But it's the same thing. You know, it could be the both of you. The both of you change at that point, right? Because it's also like the person who's this is why paramedics and stuff, they also a lot of times go through some of this trauma with spirits coming to overshadow and possess them, because they're always in heightened moments where the spirit is like, it's like fear kicks in, like fight or flight. You got to save somebody's life. So all of your I don't want to say like equilibrium, but you're open spiritually as well, which is why like it's high cases of people like that in high stress situations. Same thing with doctors and nurses, because although you got somebody in trauma that you're trying to help save, you're also put in that position, fight or flight. And if you're not taking care of yourself spiritually, you're open just as well as the person you're trying to help. So you got to be really, really, really careful. So yes, I would say, Jessamy, when mouth to mouth is done, it could happen. Right, the spirit, right. Sony, the spirit doesn't die, the flesh does. Gloria, shalom, Cosmine Cow, shalom, brother. Communicator, Yakub. Lindsay, Yah, shalom, beautiful people. Okay, So yeah, so I would definitely say all of these are definitely instances where this could happen. They got like a real short window. Remember, these spirits, they've been lingering around for a while, so they've been waiting for the perfect opportunity. It's almost like a game of a double dutch to them. They waiting, they watching. Oh, this I'm about to go, y'all. I'm going back. Hold on. Just wait. He about to boom, jump in, take over. It's like real quick. It's a very, very small window of time that they have. So make sure you're keeping your bodies in good health. All the things to make sure you're growing, keeping your body healthy, like all of these things, right? Getting enough rest. Don't wait till the last minute to do things because you get frustrated. You know, I'm saying all this from personal experience. Just be careful, be mindful, right? Listen. The scenario, though, is seriously akin to ghostly intrusion, the mortal victim or host serving merely as a target of opportunity for the pathetic, hovering, homeless spirit. None of this can be understood or appreciated without a grasp of overshadowing the subtle ways in which the unquiet dead can impinge on the living. Over the years, I have amassed a bulging file on the negative overshadowing of criminal personalities. I call the project PSI Crime. And there's a little asterisk, and down at the bottom, it says, see, for example, my article on Sung Hui Choi, the Virginia Tech Slayer, School Shootings and the Paranormal. Case study, Cho, the question mark kid, Journal of Spirituality and Paranormal Studies, 32, number 4, October 2009, page 211 to 219. That's good. I'm gonna pull this up. If I can find this. Hold on. The Virginia Tech article. I'm gonna see if I can find this. I'm gonna share it today. Okay. I call the subject PSI Crime. Richard Chase, the notorious vampire of Sacramento. Can anyone doubt that this mutilating cannibal was demon driven? Hold on. Let me start. The whole sentence over. I broke it up wrongly. Richard Chase, the notorious vampire of Sacramento. Can anyone doubt that this mutilating cannibal was demon driven? Had exhibited the famous homicidal triad marking the criminally obsessed youngster, bedwetting, animal torture, and arson. Neighbors frequently saw a zombie-like Richard rambling aimlessly around the grounds. He would wander unsteadily from place to place, end quote. To the voices coming from invisible people, Richard would answer, stop bothering me, or I'm not going to do that. Markman, Alone with the Devil. We're on page 304 at the top, and Delusions in Science and Spirituality. Among Richard's reading material, detectives found news articles about violent deaths and Old West outlaws. It happens that in 1976, 1 year before Richard's reign of terror began, 6 homicides, he became convinced that he was the reincarnation of the younger brother, the bank robbers who rode with Jesse James. Psychiatrist Ronald Markman devoted a chapter of his book, Alone with the Devil, to the completely deranged Richard Chase, concluding that he was motivated by subhuman forces. But I am afraid those awful forces are very much within the human family, though at the lowest end of the spectrum. See the information about Drew Haas in Chapter 8, especially the caption for Figure 8.1 on page 323. Let me see. Figure 8.1. Oh, okay. See the information about Drew Haas in Chapter 8, especially the caption. Okay, so it has a sign from... I don't know if I'm going to read all this. Look, when we read this all the way through from beginning to the end, we'll see it. But I'm going to show you 8.1. Figure 8.1 is the ancient sign of Druhas, wandering spirits of darkness, the lowest grade of excarnates, whose behavior and effects we touch on in the last 2 chapters. I think the words drug and drudgery come from Druha, as does the Persian druj, meaning spirit of falsehood. And this is on page 323 in this book, chapter 8. And that's this down here, figure 8.1. Right here. Okay. So we'll go back. But I'm afraid those awful forces are very much within the human family, though at the lowest end of the spectrum. See the information about Druhas in chapter 8, especially the caption for figure 8.1 on page 323. No, we cannot escape or explain away the horror by calling it subhuman, a label that explains nothing. Non-person, emptied of self by some prior, probably traumatic misfortune, may be closer to the mark, and is indeed the Russian term for sociopath. This non-entity is flypaper for the vagabond spirits that flit about in the darkest corridors of hell. Oh, yeah, the movie Fallen. Yeah, it'll make a whole lot more sense in the light of what we've been learning here, right? A lot of these things normally do. So you go back and get a whole different understanding from a lot of these movies. Okay, this next section is called the worst torture. So I think we got time to read this and probably this next little small section in this chapter. Yeah, and then we'll pause on page 308. We should be right at the hour mark at that point. Okay, page 304, the worst torture. Past life regression therapists sometimes have clients who come to them with fears of lightning or of being trapped and suffocated or of falling from a height or jumping. The reincarnationist then concludes that the hundreds of documented cases of phobias stem from the way they died in a past life. End quote. Bowman, 2001, page 17. That's definitely something I ran across. I'm like, so my fear of heights probably comes from the past life where I probably died by falling off of a building or out of an airplane or something like that. You know, all the stupidness that come to you when you're going through this whole reincarnation, trying to understand its doctrine, thinking that it's the truth, right? Yes, not. The reincarnationist then concludes that the, quote, hundreds of documented cases of phobias stem from the way they died in a past life, end quote. Bowman, 2001, page 17, or that the, quote, emotional trauma of a violent death can carry over from one life to the next, end quote. Tucker, 2005, page 123. But I have to ask, why should an abnormal state, such as a phobia, become the paragon of reincarnation if rebirth is normal and universal? Cases of reincarnation should, statistically, not be crowded in the confines of abnormal psychology, should they? They should be natural and normal. They should be everywhere, but they are not. If the evidence takes us anywhere, it is manifestly to the casualties of sudden death and the victim's persistent haunting in the gray area of psyche's outer reach. See figure 6.3, page 255. Okay, so this, on page 255, there's a diagram 6.3. And it says, diagram of the outer darkness, drawn by Janice Hensley. Ordinary, normal, linear, ego, self, reality, beta, threshold, veil of damn. I'm trying to understand it. Okay. Threshold. Okay, let me show it to y'all. Okay, so on this side, can everybody see that? Okay, I think everybody can see that. Okay. This is the normal side, right? And see this line? This is the barrier that separates the normal from the abnormal. And all this stuff over here is going on in the abnormal. So on the normal side, or it says ordinary, it says, they stemming down. This is saying, what's that? Normal, linear, ego, reality, self, beta. And then you have this line that separates these two sections. And down the line, it says threshold, veil, dam. And there's like this tunnel of what would seem to be light, but it says right here, this is tunnel. And all of these things that come through this tunnel is EB, altar, dark angel, reincarnators, spirits of mayhem. So that's not a good tunnel you want to find yourself in. And around it at the top, you have barrier compromised right here. And then it's Drew Haas, head trauma. I'm sorry, no, not Drew Haas. It says drugs. Drugs, head trauma, fever. And then there's a dotted line, and it has ASC, which is altered states of consciousness. And under that, it has, what's that? Holistic, non-local, and then non-physical world. So it seems like the top portion is like the main category, and then the things under it that stemming from it is the things that come out of that, right? Okay, so at the bottom, under the tunnel, oh, wait, hold on. I looked at this wrong. Okay, so you see this line. Okay, let's go back to this line where it has threshold, veil, and dam, right? So the threshold is the bottom part of this down here. The veil is the tunnel portion, right? Everything is inside this tunnel, the veil. And then up here is the dam, right? And it has that stuff up there. Okay, so at the bottom, threshold, stemming from the tunnel, we'll call it the tunnel of delusion, the veil of delusion. Stemming from that is shock, abuse, serious illness, injury. Then you have that dotted line here. And on this side, it has timeless, subtle, soul, alpha, and supernatural. So I probably had to study it for a little while to really be able to explain that. But I'm sure in this chapter, it goes on to explain that. She just said, look at the figure. I'm just looking real quick to see if it's referring to the figure where it gives a quick or a better explanation of what I just did. We may not see it until we come back and we actually read this from the beginning. All right, so we'll just hop back to where we were at. 6.3. Okay, on page 304. If the evidence takes us anywhere, it is manifestly to the casualties of sudden death and the victim's persistent haunting in the gray area of our psyche's outer reach. See figure 6.3, page 255. And that's what we just looked at with the tonal and all of that good stuff. I offer this interpretation as an alternative to the reincarnationist touted business of family return, whereby the departed relative makes a giant U-turn in the sky and goes right back to his earthly home to reincarnate as a newborn member of his own family. You can be your own grandson. You can practice, quote, mother switching, end quote, wherein the deceased mom is reborn in her own daughter. Such possibilities exist, says the reincarnationist, because some souls choose the circumstance of their next incarnation. I wonder why some souls take advantage of this cosmic law and others do not. Theorists who have cottoned to this choosing idea tend to overrate the concept of free will. Theorists who have cottoned to this choosing idea tend to overrate the concept of free will. Malachi Martin, for example, asserts that victims of possession choose their possession. Roger Dupay, for another, and most of his colleagues in the FBI Behavioral Science Unit believe that sociopaths also choose the evil path. It is very much a Western concept, this limitless choosing. But note that the Wuqabi cult of Ethiopia, the possessed person, quote, has no recourse but to accommodate the spirit. Possession is instigated by the spirits. People cannot choose spirits and cannot choose to be possessed, end quote. Crapazano and Garrison, Crapazano and Garrison, 1977, page 195. The overwhelming evidence identifies would-be, wannabe reincarnators as none other than those who died and went into spirit believing they could come back. During Dr. Carl Wickland's 30 Years Among the Dead, the title of his book, the spirit of William Stanley spoke through the medium mystic Mrs. Wickland. Quote, I was a theosophist and I wanted to reincarnate. I got into a child's body and crippled it, and also crippled my mind and that of the child. I did not know how to get out. The state I was in was the worst torture anybody could have. I wanted to warn others to never try to reincarnate through a little child. Leave the reincarnation alone. It is only a mistake. There is no such thing as reincarnation. One gets all mixed up trying to enter another's body. And it says my italics on where the words I did not know how to get out is italicized, and she said those were her italics. And if you have that book, it's a really good book. I read through it. And they have that on Audible. That's a really good listen. It's called hold on. He just said it. 30 Years Among the Dead. Yeah, that's on Audible and printed and Kindle. Next section. Pangs of the Dead. The reincarnationist, decking himself out in the garb of spiritualism, has loftily pronounced on matters of soul, karma, heaven, and cosmic laws. These are all crochets. In reality, the doctrine of rebirth offers precious little illumination when it comes to the truth of life and spirit. How presumptuous, how misleading is the sweeping claim that the ills of today stem from some bygone existence. Past life readers, professionalizing the sham, slickly apply this fake formula. Do you suffer from an allergy to dust? But of course, you died in your former life in a mind explosion, cloud of dust. Nonsense. In his fascinating book, The Psychic Dimensions of Mental Health, England's Dr. Arthur Gurdon, though a reincarnationist himself, showed that the sensitive empath, the host, is all too prone to the travails of others, both living and dead. He should know he's one, an empath. Quote, sometimes I acquire the symptoms of patients who began to recover at the same time that I assumed their symptoms, end quote. The good doctor had also been assailed by the pangs of the dead. During his stay at an inn near Oatmore, he was overtaken with violent shivering, cold, and jaundice for 2 days running. Afterward, he found out that Oatmore was one of the last places in England blighted by malaria. Only then did he realize that he, quote, had experienced all the symptoms of malaria. It seems to have been a case of picking up the psychic vibrations, end quote, 1982. To Gurdon, we can also turn for an understanding of why we pick up certain, quote, psychic vibrations, end quote. We share, he says, a common psychic life and exchange with those on the same wavelength, not only thoughts and feelings, but the syndromes of disease. None of this, of course, is reincarnation. It is the unseen influence, the overshadowing, a form of mediumship, sometimes involving an ongoing relationship with the departed. Quote, we would associate after death with persons of attainments similar to our own. end quote. Ian Stevenson, Children Who Remember Previous Lives. There is, after all, no firmer principle of spiritual science than, quote, like unto like, end quote. What Girdham calls the, quote, same wavelength, end quote. Herein we make our destiny, pull in our fate, willy-nilly, creating our own spiritual gravity. America's great medium, Arthur Ford, when asked to explain spirit familiars, simply pointed out that they are, quote, drawn to you because you are doing something that they were doing, end quote. Editors, Psychic, 1972, page 28. Particularly in the arts and creative work, we hear the occasional story of overshadowing by a talented forebear. A St. Louis author named Dorothy Wolford, for example, wrote poetry that turned out to be a facsimile of verses written by a 17th century poet named Anne Broadbent. The matter was investigated, and it became clear that Wolford shared some unique characteristics and taste with Broadbent. Despite the suggestion of reincarnation, researchers concluded that the St. Louis woman's writing was a case of unconscious mediumship or slight possession by the long-dead poetess. Quote, suppose an inventor passes on before completion of his invention, end quote, hypothesized one of Dr. Wickland's discarnate guests in an effort to illustrate this kind of influence. Quote, he will not give up. He studies it on the spirit side of life. He finds some mortal sensitive and impresses the invention on his mind. Then that one perfects it and gives it to the world. If I impress a sensitive with an idea, in one sense, I reincarnate, not in his body, but by impressing him with what I have done. Everything that is invented on earth has first been invented in the spirit world. That was good. Let me go back and read this again. Hold on. Let me start with the St. Louis author on page 307. It's the middle of the last paragraph. A St. Louis author named Dorothy Wolford, for example, wrote poetry that turned out to be a facsimile of verses written by a 17th century poet named Anne Broadbent. The matter was investigated, and it became clear that Wolford shared some unique characteristics and tastes with Broadbent. Despite the suggestion of reincarnation, researchers concluded that the St. Louis woman's writing was a case of unconscious mediumship or slight possession by the long-dead poetess. Quote, suppose an inventor passes on before completion of his invention, end quote, hypothesized one of Dr. Wickland's discarnate guests in an effort to illustrate this kind of influence. Quote, he will not give up. He studies it on the spirit side of life. He finds some mortal sensitive and impresses the invention on his mind. Then that one perfects it and gives it to the world. If I impress a sensitive with an idea, in one sense I reincarnate, not in his body, but by impressing him with what I want done. Everything that is invented on earth has first been invented in the spirit world. End quote, 1924. And that is where we're going to pause. That was really good. I've heard that a lot in my life growing up, that all things happen here, or a manifestation of what's already happening in the spirit. And I tend to believe that that is true, right? A lot of things we're kind of just reacting to what has already taken place in the spiritual realm. It's like we're trying to play catch up a lot of the times, right? Especially when you're not in tune with what's going on with the spiritual world, where you can walk in tandem side by side and really be proficient and just be on a ball down here in the flesh. But a lot of times it's like we're playing catch up. Oops, what happened? Wait a minute, hold on. What did we miss? Why didn't we catch that? It shouldn't be that way. All right, beautiful people. So that is it for today. It is 59 minutes and 57 seconds. We're only going to be here an hour. I got a lot of stuff to do today, so I can't be here too long. I didn't have a lot of extra stories. I mean, I could have, but I just didn't. I got to get on the ball. I got some time to make up with all the stuff I got to get done. Thank y'all for hanging out, y'all. It is Thursday, January the 19th, 2023, day 319 of year 4 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets. Another 4-year consecutive day count, day 1,338. We read pages 11 through 12 in Romance of the Red Star, which is another name for Wuqabi. And then we read pages 299 to page 308 in Delusions in Science and Spirituality. Before I get started, I'm going to try and look up this article for Virginia Tech that Susan B. Martinez just spoke about. So if y'all find it before I do, just like post it under here. But if I find it, I should be able to find it. I'm going to post it in the community section and under both videos on YouTube and Facebook. All right, beautiful people. So let's see. Look, I'm about to say, who want to pray today? Let me see. Father, we thank you for, what's the word? Like definition of it would be, continuing on, even in spite of the regardless of what's a word for that? I mean, I guess you could say diligence, but that's not really the word I'm looking for. I'm gonna just give a definition. I don't know. Father, we just thank you for just choosing to keep going on daily, in spite of what else is going on around us, even things that we may have brought on ourselves. Thank you just for the motivation to keep going on until things get better. Yeah, things get better. And a lot of times they get bad because our own foolish decisions, but just thank you for the motivation to keep going on until we get back to the good part. Thank you. Perseverance. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you for perseverance. Thank you. And may we all have double, multiple, triple portions of perseverance. Onward and upward. Yes. Key, shalom, tikva, hey girl, hey, progression. Yes. All right, y'all, that's it for today. I love y'all. I am out of here. You're welcome. I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.